Hello, welcome to Simple Noise. My name is Brian Lamar. I work in quality here at RY Rocket, and joining me almost as always is Andrew DeSillis. Hello, Andrew. How are you, sir?
Hi, Brian. I'm doing great. It's glad to be back after skipping an episode while I was out traveling.
Man, I did not like the one-on-one interview, but I'm glad you're here. It was a good episode, though. Hopefully, everybody listened to it, and I thought it was interesting. And it's not just one; it's 2-on-1 today. We're back to normal.
We are indeed. And Brian, it was a great episode, but I could tell you were lonely.
Well, that's just a general. I'm always lonely with or without my cast. Joining us today, Isaac Rogers, CEO of Sago Health. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. And I want to start off by saying I know you've lived in Nashville for a long time. You look like Nashville.
I don't know what that means, Brian. I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
That's a compliment.
So I guess I appreciate that, but I do love my home city. It's an adopted home city for me. I've been here. I've been in Nashville about almost going. I'm getting close to 30 years now, and I'm here by accident. But man, I fell in love with this place, and it's got so many things that work for me and my family, and I'm not from this area originally, but this has certainly become home.
Well, I've seen so many changes. Every time I go to Nashville, it looks like a whole new city. And
Do you ever hear that expression that like I get lost in my own city? So a few weeks
yeah,
ago, I went back to the old 2020 research offices. I was in that area going to an event, and they have put up legitimate high rises entirely around that what used to be a 5-story building, and I could not honestly find my way there without looking at the street signs. And so like that whole saying like, oh, I get lost in my own city. It is unbelievably true here in Nashville. And it's been great to see that boom and all the things that come with it. There's been a lot of downsides too with additional traffic and the cost of living, but it's certainly a dynamic city.
well, I'd love to talk about Nashville for 45 minutes, but you've got some cool news. And maybe before we kind of get into Sago Health, I'd love to hear you mentioned briefly about 2020, but I'd love to hear about your background.
Yeah, sure. So, Brian, I've known you a long time. Andrew, I've known you for a few years. So I've been in the market research industry since 2007. So I guess I'm coming up on, what is that, 18, 19 years that I've been here. And like I think everybody in the industry fell into this by accident. Not everybody, but I'm sure 95% of us. And I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Brian, but the way I got into this industry, I was coming out of graduate school, and somebody said, "Hey, there's this guy named Jim Bryson,
I love Jim.
and he is thinking about further investing in some old research software stuff that he does. He's really got a in-person research practice, and he does some moderating and stuff. And my mandate, because I had run technology businesses prior to going to graduate school, I'd run a business intelligence product. I'd run a transaction services company that did a lot of government contracting, and so I'd had that experience. I was actually trying to leave that experience. That's one of the reasons I went to business school was that I thought I was going to take an inflection point in my career. And so this friend says, "Hey, can you go talk this guy out of making these investments? Because I'm afraid he's going to like mortgage his house on this. He just believes that, research is going to change and evolve over the next few years, but I'm scared for him. Can you go talk him out of it?" So I had lunch with Jim, and instead of talking him out of making these investments, I talked him into it. And I walked away from that. I still remember that feeling like, oh, our shared friend is going to kill me because I did the opposite of what I was asked to do. Turned out to be, I would think, probably the most pivotal lunch meeting I've ever had in my life. And it changed my trajectory. I found an industry that I loves me back a little bit. And I don't regret, that decision nor the last 18, 19 years that I've been here.
Awesome. And then series of acquisitions, guess, brought you to Sago, and now you're at Sago Health. Tell us
Correct.
about Sago Health. This is brand new.
Yeah. So, we, as of early August, Sago Health is an independent organization. So we are now part of a group of companies that focus exclusively on healthcare research and healthcare services. So our parent company is a group called Med Learning Group Holdings, which folks in research are not going to probably know or be aware of. Med Learning Group, it's a lot of work on the medical education side of pharma and that industry, but there's so many ways that we're going to be able to create synergies, and there's so many ways those businesses actually work together. It's a brilliant move. Sago Health, we are actually independent, if you want to think about us that way, underneath that portfolio set of businesses as kind of the research side of the business. We are what I think most people think of when they think of like the Sago's legacy healthcare research, that is what we do. So we focus exclusively on healthcare research, HCPs and patients, US and around the world, qualitative and quantitative. I've got teams primarily in North America. We got teammates all around the world serving clients in, a few dozen countries. Amazing business. I have the honor and pleasure of leading it every day, and awesome team. Our focus hasn't changed. The way we serve our clients hasn't changed. I would say we are just laser focused now on the needs of our healthcare clients, how we provide research services to them.
So this is a true carve out of,
Correct.
when I think about Sago, and where I've both enjoyed partnering with Sago on healthcare audiences and competing in having my client pick Sago over me, it was traditionally those things like physicians, qualitative research. I think particularly about patients is an area where those assets have always been very strong. So that kind of brand, what I had thought of, maybe even going all the way back to like a Schlesinger type brand in that.
That's correct. Yeah,
you
that
know,
is
that's
exclusively what we focus on as a business now here at the Sago Health side of the business. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us what you're focusing on. Is it primarily quantitative research? Is it qualitative research? Is it hybrid? Is there an expertise in healthcare research, or are you just kind of a generalist, which is a great thing in healthcare?
Great question, Brian. So we do both qual and quant. We actually do some more qualitative services than we do quantitative services. But clients come to us, I think, for a few different reasons. First of all, we've got an extraordinarily powerful healthcare practitioner panel and patient panel, as you mentioned, Andrew. So, that's been something we've been building and maturing over literally decades, but specifically over the last many years, as so much of that work has moved online, making sure that we've got the physicians, the specialists, and the patients that can come in and address the client's needs. So clients typically come to us for what I think of as audience. Who do we need to bring into this research, whether it's qual or quant? We're quite ambivalent, so we can serve them on both sides. And I think that's a strategic advantage we have, is that either for hybrid research, which does happen, I think it doesn't happen as much as some people would want to happen or would like to happen, but we are certainly an enabler of that because we do both. It's interesting. We were talking yesterday about 30 to 35% of all of our quantitative work, there is a hybrid component to, which I think is a kind of a fascinating statistic, because when I think about the broader industry, I should say, is in a lot of ways less hybrid. And so there is, I think, a recognition on the healthcare side of the space that integrating both qualitative and quantitative insights together has a lot of value, and that's a specialty area for us. We have global panels, but we focus specifically in obviously the U.S. market, and then we have some panels in Europe as well. We enable client work all around the world through not only our own panels and capabilities, but partners we have as well. Clients come to us and they know that we can deliver quality results, and it in some ways doesn't matter what they're going to be asking for. Quant, qual, you've got it. U.S., global, we can handle that. And the level of expertise comes from just, honestly, we've got team members that have been focused on the healthcare research industry for some of them 20, 30 years. And so when clients come to us and they say, hey, there's this audience that we want to go talk to, either quant or qual, there's very few people in the world that have the level of domain expertise that our team does.
So you're not afraid of doing qual and quant and follow-ups and IDIs?
Not at all.
Awesome. And we're so like-minded. I'm so happy to hear you say that, because we're the same way. I guess we're true competitors, and the healthcare space is big enough for all of us. There's not that many out there that provide good quality sample and research. And I've been saying this talking point, and Andrew, I know you agree with this, is that one of the true measures of a strong panel is if you can do qual and quant. If you ask them, can I do an IDI? Can I do a telephone follow-up? Can I do a recontact? Can I do a product placement test? And you can say yes. Not only that, encourage it. That is the mark of a great panel, and there aren't that many out there. And so kudos to your team, especially that's tough with physicians and people that are going through ailments and things like that, to be able to do both types of research. And the incentive structure is very different. So that's awesome.
And there's also recognition that, when we think about hybrid work and mixing the quant and the qual together, you mentioned something, Brian, about physicians and patients. So we've got strength in both, which is a little bit unique as well. And we're seeing more and more of our clients come to us and want to understand both sides of that equation as it relates to a given therapy area. It's not about just talking to the physicians. It's also about talking about the caregivers and the patients and everybody else involved, the allied health professionals. And so we see a healthy amount of research these days that includes both sides of that. And so our ability to deliver on both sides of the coin is also, I think, really, really helpful. And honestly, I think it makes better research. Like, you know, if
Hmm.
you think about your own personal experiences, like if you just heard from your physician about how they think about treating you, Brian or Andrew, you're just getting part of it. Like, how do Brian and Andrew even bring this topic up to their physician? How do they think about that? What are the words and phrases they use? And you know, I think it's a great turn that we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, where there is more of that two-part conversation going on, where you need both of those people involved. And so that's again a place where I think A, you get really great research results, and B, I think Sago Health has a lot of strength.
And I'm sure Andrew wants to jump in, but I'll say, when I talk to people, especially younger researchers, well, let me start with myself. I'm an older researcher, and we used to separate completely qual and quant, right?
Yeah.
And this is a qualitative research. This is quant. We're going to rotate it. We're going to do qual, and we're going to follow up with quant, vice versa, right? Back and forth. That's how traditional research is done. But now you can do such amazing hybrid things. You don't think like that. And I think younger researchers don't think like that. They think of, here's my business problem. And you can get creative with how us researchers can solve that research problem. And it's not, we're going to do a quant test, or we have it to do a qual test. You can do both at the same time, and you can do it effectively. And then you can get really creative. And it's very different than it was even 10, 15 years ago.
Well, and I think, you know, some of the ways that the broader industry has evolved over the last 10 or 15 years has in many ways entrenched that separation between quant and qual,
Mm-hmm.
which I do not think is healthy, by the way, for the industry. But you know, you would have a lot of providers and partners out there that when you bring up this concept of hybrid research on either side, they would run for the hills, because for a variety of economic reasons and the way they built their businesses, they in many ways can't support those things. And so I think we trained our stakeholders, trained our buyers that, oh, hybrid is hard, and this idea of doing quant and qual together is difficult. When in fact, with an actual panel and actual access to those assets, it shouldn't be hard, and especially with today's technology. So I'm hopeful that maybe the pendulum can swing the other direction.
I like that you used instead of the word premium, you used the word actual. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting, and you know, you're absolutely right. Um, these types of things, especially in 2025, as connected as all of our respondents are, whether it's someone about a roll of toilet paper or someone who's influencing, you know, what kind of MRI machine someone's going to buy. We all have cell phones. We all get all of our notifications. And so the idea that you could never contact someone to send a 2-minute video or to jump on a phone call for 5 minutes to clarify something, that's just patently impossible. It's kind of an absurd assertion that many providers will make.
Well, and I think, you know, we don't talk about our panelists enough, those actual human beings that are asking to do these things. And so another advantage, Andrew, is not only being able to get both that qualitative and quantitative insight in the same project, but you have people who will gravitate towards one methodology or another, right? Like there are oncologists who never want to do another video interview again, but they'll take surveys to answer your questions. And then there are neurologists who they're tired of taking surveys. And so they would love to just jump on a quick 30 or 45-minute phone call with a researcher. And so, you know, I think this flexibility about how we collect these insights from these individuals gives them flexibility. And I think you get a broader audience and probably the right people sometimes that, you know, if you would just approach them with a survey, they may say no. But if you say, look, I'd like to do a video interview, they might say yes to that. And so, you know, I think it's actually healthier for the respondent population to have multiple ways to provide their feedback.
So I'd love to ask you maybe a couple questions, a little more broad questions.
Sure.
What's kind of going? I don't have a pulse. Maybe Andrew, you might be able to answer this too. I don't really have the pulse of what's going on in healthcare research, what the trends are, what the industry's like. I know about the Qualtrics Press Ganey acquisition, and that's kind of a big move that I think has a big healthcare element to it. And I think of when I thought of that, I thought initially around the Qualtrics and Forsta side of it, but I think the Press Ganey side of it is bigger and more important to Qualtrics. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, on that in particular, I'm like my exposure is, you know, what I know about those companies in the industry and what I've seen in press releases. So, you know, my point of view is I think Qualtrics was largely looking at the broader business that is serving in the healthcare space, and there are more and more questions that need to be answered in ways that what we think of as traditional market research can play a huge role. And so I think it's a really smart move. I think it will take some time to understand how that may change the position of Forsta and the products like Decipher that exist in the industry. I see a lot of stuff written that, makes it seem like this is going to be a massive quick change for all of us, even the ones that are not even in the healthcare side, because they might use one of those products. I've never seen, a M&A situation where things happen as quickly as people anticipate. And, you can look at a lot of M&A that's happened in and around our space, and 2, 3, 4, 5 years can go on, and products still exist and things largely haven't changed. I mean, things change eventually, but it's never an overnight thing. And I do think it is a recognition that, a criticism that I will say is neither right nor wrong about the healthcare industry in general in the U.S. is that, there is some ambivalence to getting to, especially like patient satisfaction and patient feedback. And there was a lot of focus on the commercial side of the pharma industry, but I think that's criticism is probably not fully warranted. And I would say the trend we're watching in the last 2 or 3 years is completely counter to that. When we work with the agencies and the pharmaceutical firms that we serve, we see them adopting more research, wanting to answer more broader questions, wanting to do research and gather insights faster than ever before. It for me, I've been on the broader consumer and B2B side. I've now as well been on the health side. It's what people could level as I think an accurate criticism 7 or 8 years ago about the healthcare spaces. They are, the word to be used, they're slow to adopt innovation. They've got all the regulatory concerns, and so they're behind. That would be the word that people would use. And so you'd look at the consumer and B2B space and how the embrace of research technology, the embrace of even early days of AI, unquestionably, I think the healthcare side of our industry was a step or two slower. What's playing out now, though, is they have rapidly accelerated their adoption of innovation post-COVID. They saw during COVID that they had to change a lot of the methodologies that existed because you couldn't go talk to physicians in person. You couldn't necessarily address the same audience. You couldn't do your product testing in the same ways. And so they had to switch. They had to figure out how to fit that into their regulatory environment. And now that they've seen that and seen what that innovation can do, now they are completely embracing this idea of shaping their businesses, the way that they gather insights, whether I'm a pharma company or a research agency, to honestly take advantage of a lot of the things the broader industry innovated on maybe a few years ago. But it's great because now you know how this movie's going to play out, right? You know how it's going to end up. And so there's a lot of great change happening on this side of the industry that I think is, again, kind of echoed in the Qualtrics Press Ganey acquisition. There's just so much opportunity over here because we are now going to get to do some of the things that the broader industry's been doing for a while.
Earlier this year, I was at the Insights Association Healthcare Summit in Philadelphia, and a lot of what was being discussed was the usage of artificial intelligence, synthetic samples, and so on and so forth, particularly to healthcare. And there was kind of like a huge rift in the general murmurings of the room, because it was on one side people saying that, well, how could this ever apply to healthcare? We can't create a digital twin of an individual physician or someone with a rare ailment, who's such a niche population.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that was, well, it is that uniqueness that requires of us to use tools like this, because without it, we will never be able to achieve an accurate read, to achieve something that is representative, because when you're working with like a healthcare systems population, right, so many of those users or customers, patients, so on and so forth, are not even online or won't answer the phone, right, or don't have phones even. And similarly with the physicians, there are not a lot of physicians who are participating on our panels. There are good ones, but they look different than those who are participating. So I'm just kind of wondering, from where you're sitting now, obviously AI is here, it's here to stay. Synthetics are probably going to play a role, but is that something that we can expect to see from Sago Health? A lot of innovation in those spaces, in those directions?
Absolutely, Andrew. And I would say that conversation that you're referencing, I think it's a pretty good echo of what we see in the industry at large. There are, think about it like a barbell. There are people on one side of this conversation who have either skepticism or, they don't see how this can impact the research they're doing. And then on the other end, there are people who have already embraced seeing the value, and for many of the points that you mentioned, see that actually in the healthcare space, some of these AI approaches have more advantages than they do on the consumer and B2B side. And so I will tell you that some of the most innovative client relationships we have are here at Sago Health. We have done things with AI, with really pushing the boundaries on data collection that are far more advanced than the average consumer and B2B research client out there. And so this stigma, I think, that on the pharma side, you're so much slower and you don't adopt innovation, absolutely not true. Matter of fact, I think that I've seen more appetite for experimentation, change, real investment in AI on the pharma side of the industry than I have, generally speaking, across the board. And one of the things that I think is beneficial for that is, you're right, Andrew. The populations that we seek to get feedback from are so narrow, they're so hard to get to, that if you can use these AI tools to come up with projections, if you can use it to, create, work with clients to create data warehouses that then feed their AI models, like that can be a stopgap for how rare some of these audiences are. On the consumer side, it's kind of easy to go throw out another survey and get the feedback you need. But in rare disease states with, really rare therapy areas, if you could start building a knowledge warehouse that could inform some of these answers, wow, it's really powerful. And guess what? Like, those things are now happening. And anybody that tells you it's not happening on the healthcare side of the industry is just flat wrong. And I think that some of the most aggressive case studies are actually in the healthcare side of the business.
That's really great to hear. And that was kind of the camp that I sat on during the debate. And it was interesting because I felt that on one hand, there were dangers of using synthetics because the underrepresented audiences would continue to be underrepresented when the data was trained. And that's a concern, but it's a concern that can be tackled.
Yes, it can.
And I feel like, when we're looking at consumer and even to some degree B2B, that lack of inconvenience of doing the research, like you just said, throw out another survey.
Yeah.
When you're a neurosurgeon, how many neurosurgeons are there in the country? A few thousand, probably. It's a $1,000 CPI to have them do a survey. Well, if we can then do 5 of those, train a model, discuss with that model, iterate with that, in kind of the same way with the patients, the actual like mechanism of the research, and that is expensive and difficult, I think makes it a fantastic fit compared to other verticals, because you're solving a problem for the researchers, not just
and there's a different pressure on the pharma industry than there has been, say, 5 and 10 years ago. We hear on a daily basis that it is more important they get drugs to market faster, that they understand how to do things parallel as they're bringing things to market. Whereas, you thought about very sequential type of research and very, structured research plans in the healthcare side of the industry. Now that's not the case. People need to be more agile. They need to move faster. And, these are things that I think the broader industry may have adopted a few years ago, but that pressure, alongside of the fact that the data we're collecting is so valuable and so difficult to get to, makes this a perfect breeding ground for AI.
I'm curious, because healthcare is kind of a broad term, would you say that your business focuses in pharmaceutical, medical device, healthcare systems? I know a lot of work is done with kind of like branding for hospitals and.
The answer is yes. We do a few thousand projects a year. I mean, we've got hundreds of projects going every single month, but I think you covered the big ones that we'll typically find. So pharma and med device systems are becoming a bigger part of our conversations and the projects we're doing. And we're starting to see a lot more diversity in those projects. We're starting to see that, it's not even just the commercial side of pharma and med device that are interested in doing research and learning from HCPs and patients. There's a lot more applications of these research needs in a broader area. And so that's great, because you got a lot of buying centers that were historically thinking about, like, I'm going to go get my data from syndicated data or wherever, and they're now saying, there's a real big role here for custom research. And so we're getting introduced into departments that frankly we didn't even know existed inside of some of these firms before. And our research agency partners are, doing work and bringing us work that when you look at it, you're like, well, where'd that work come from? And I think there's another parallel here, right? And if you go back 10 years, the word, the words CX and UX started to show up 10, 15 years ago. And that really broadened the aperture in the broader market research industry, right? Because now it wasn't just about like, ad testing and product testing for market research. Now you've got customer experience, you've got user experience, and these domains. And I give credit to my friend Seema. She said, Isaac, the problem with the market research industry on CX is that we saw it coming. We didn't think it was real research. And so the train left the station, and now CX is bigger than we are. And I think that same evolution is happening on the healthcare side of the industry, where now we've got these other places where what we would think of as research and insight and customer feedback and patient feedback is becoming really critical to how they deliver on their mission. And so the aperture for who is doing quote unquote research inside of healthcare is now broadening, just the same way they saw it happen in enterprise 15 years ago on the broader industry side. So again, another talking about like a perfect storm. You've got a broadening set of folks who are interested in the insights that you can get from your audiences. You've got technology that showed up at the right time, and you've got a pressure to get products and drugs in the market faster. And it's a kind of a perfect storm for innovation and a great time to be on this side of the industry.
Well, you guys are well positioned, and I'm looking forward to our rebrand. On this podcast for years, we've been excited about brand rebrands and changing of names. So we're, if that happens, I'm not going to ask you the question. It may or may not happen, but looking forward to that. And how can people reach you, by the way?
How can people reach me?
Yeah.
LinkedIn is probably the best place. I've got kind of a unique name, right? So Isaac, I think there's only probably a small number of Isaacs actually in the market research space. So LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. I'm active there, and so I get messages there, and that's typically where I start conversations. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place. Isaac Rogers, and then Brian, happy to share with your audience my full contact information if they'd like.
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes. Andrew, do you have a rant? I could do a rant. Do you have a rant? Or Isaac, you're always welcome to do a rant if you want.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go first because it's it is Friday morning and it's kind of been a long week, and I'm afraid what I'd rant on.
I know.
So I'd like you to set the stage first before I come in.
Let me tell you, Andrew and this is a good thing. I think it's been a tough year in research for everybody. High growth targets and a weird economy, and you could, not to get political, but there's Trump and tariff, which is always causes uncertainty, whether you like it or not, or you're a fan or not. And I think this was one of the toughest weeks I've probably had at ROI Rocket, and I think Andrew may have said the same thing. So our rants might be a little challenging today. I can do a personal one.
Sure,
go for it.
And it's a little more businessy anyway. All right, it drives me crazy when I'm traveling, and I'm now become a big bag checker. I used to not be. I enjoy.
I don't know if we can be friends anymore, Brian. That's one of my.
This is the one thing that might change my mind. Okay. And when you're waiting at the carousel, which they've done a really good job, airports have done a good job of taking care of luggage and getting it pretty quickly, so it doesn't slow you down too much. When people crowd the baggage claim a carousel, and they get right up against it, and then if you're like late, if you have to go to the restroom, and then you're standing behind, you can't get your luggage. And I do not understand this mentality where all you have to do is everybody would make a deal to get 4 feet back. When you see your luggage, go get it. But no, these people they're basically in the carousel. And it makes me hate people. Why? Why are people so selfish?
I think you're becoming an advertisement for not checking your bags, Brian. Like
I know, all of a sudden I'm on your team. And I noticed that recently that it happens almost every flight I'm on, that people just crowd the baggage carousel, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we should just put a diagram from like 9th grade geometry and show how if everyone took one step back, you could fit.
Well, tape.
Right, one more step back. That's 3 more people.
Invested $4 a tape, and you can put like a little line back there. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm gonna jump in on this because this is fun, and I want Isaac to debate us because. And I travel a lot for work, Isaac. I know you do too. For probably about a decade, I was team no checked bag. It's not slowing me down. I'm not going to drop this bag off. That's ridiculous. and it was always like a point of pride of like how
Yeah.
many days could I travel and have everything in one bag.
Yeah.
But Brian converted me because it's not a I have so much that I must also check a bag. That's ridiculous. It's checking the carry-on so that you have no bag.
Yeah.
Travel unfettered through the airport.
Freedom.
Just pure freedom. Just you in a backpack, no bag, nothing rolling behind you, not getting stuck on the escalators.
You can get blast on the flight. You don't have to rush on the flight to like store your bag.
Oh no, they're making you gate check. Doesn't matter. I don't have them.
Well, I can't tell you, gentlemen, that you're going to convert me on this call, but I do hear your points, and so
Nice
if
try.
I guess I mean, you're putting me on the spot here. I didn't really think about what my rant of the week is, but I think something's been on my mind, and that is, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this. So I'm this is heretical to say it, but it is incredible to me how poorly I think we in business and I can say in the healthcare market research space even don't pick the right modality to deliver messages. So inside of your own organization or between clients, it is amazing to me how many times picking up the damn phone solves all the problems in the world. And I don't care if it's, you got a client that you need to discuss a proposal with. I don't care if it's a colleague that, you're going back and forth about it's budgeting season. So you're working on budgeting. And how many times, that I think we're just in this natural habit of, well, I'm in email, the email thread has started, and so I want to respond back. So we have it all there. Or you're in, Teams or Slack and you want to keep it there. I don't like, I want to be better at this, but man, it's amazing to me how many times I'll pull up an email thread, 14, 15, 16 different, emails in this thing. And I'll look at what we're trying to do and I'll just pick up my phone. I'll call that person. I'll be like, hey, can we talk about this? And like 90 seconds later, we have solved whatever the problem was. And it would have been 3 and 4 back and forths. And so I think like my it's not a rant, but like just an observation of something I'm trying to be better at and something I'm going to push our teammates at Sago Health to do better is like know when to switch your communication method to fit where you are in that conversation. And conversations aren't linear. You might start something that seems very small and then you get to a point, know when to break that chain and realize, hey, and it goes the other way. It's not always pick up the phone. Sometimes it's like you look at your calendar and you're like, why are we having a meeting about this? I had a meeting already. Like now that I got into it, I went, this could have been a 3-shot back and forth Teams conversation. We didn't need to put 30 minutes on the calendar. No, I appreciated it was a 10-minute call and I got 20 minutes that I could actually get some work done. But
you felt like you win.
I think that muscle needs to be better developed in maybe business in general, but I will say specifically in market research.
100% agree. That's a really good one. And communication's gotten very odd lately. Like I'm texting, I know Andrew texts clients every day.
Yeah.
And now there's we're IMing each other, we're emailing, we're calling, we're texting, we're doing Zoom calls and team calls, and it's just you're right. We need to kind of get back.
I'm a phone call, so I'm not like
I
do a little bit of texting with clients and colleagues and partners, Andrew, but I'm not a huge texter for business. But it's amazing. You can hear it in people's voices sometimes. You call a partner and they're like, hello? Like, because no one calls them. And I had that experience yesterday or the day before. I called somebody and it's almost, they were almost like, oh my God, somebody called my phone. But man, it's such a shortcut to, to getting to the root of whatever the challenge or the problem, the opportunity is, can sometimes be like, just like, let's switch up the way we're communicating and that can solve a lot of problems.
But I love that so much because I have always, even when I was told I didn't have to, put my personal cell phone number in my email signature, and my email signature is added to every email that I send. You don't have to scroll all the way down to find it. And sometimes people will call me and I'm so sorry. I'm jumping into your. Like, that's why it's there. And you're absolutely right that you do get it done so much more quickly. And particularly, I like to say I'm a survey nerd who's cursed with the ability to sell, but the truth is that I've always made my living by being in sales. And so when someone needs to get a hold of me, I want them to call me. I haven't had this happen. I was just on the longest vacation I've ever taken, actually, longer than either of my paternity leaves, which is weird to think about. But it was just a bunch of things that happened. And I had a client call me who knew I was out. And just, I have this big issue and I'm so sorry, but I need your help. It was like a 4-minute phone call.
Yeah.
Fixed my birthday.
Yeah.
And
And
it
if you
was
wouldn't have
just,
taken that call, there's a lot of times where that's going to be a 4-hour back and forth when you get back to the office. And
you know,
there's a, like, look, like, I think there's no one way to live life. And I do believe like you need a separation between work and your personal life. But there's also a compromise I think that can be had where if you have that 4-minute conversation, like you're talking about, Andrew, that could have saved, 4 hours once you get back to the office. I'm a huge fan of that too. And look, like
yeah,
I have an option with this telephone. It's amazing. I don't have to pick up.
right.
And so, it is, I'll be one of the first that if, coming back from a family vacation or something and I get a phone call from a client or like, I'll answer it because I'm like, look, I'm saving myself time
Yeah.
that then I can use for my personal life down the road versus I'm going to come back on Monday morning and I'm going to have, 28 hours worth of work to do in a 24-hour day. For me, it's a way to compromise, but it's not for everybody.
Absolutely.
Isaac, thank you so much for joining. That was a good rant, unprepared rant. That was awesome little discussion. We'll have you on soon. And on a personal level, I love seeing you, talking to you. I've always been a big fan, following your career, and you're going to do great things at Sago Health and in the future. And so thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.